Russell from mining.com.au, and joining me today is the Managing Director of Black Canyon, Brendan Cummins. Brendan, how are you this morning?
Yeah, really well, thanks, Shay. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. And I think we should talk about one of the least popular metals that happens to be one of the fifth most common metals, which I didn't know if it wasn't for one of our previous videos where we've talked, manganese. Now, you've mentioned briefly to me before that manganese is used in steel. And I've got to be honest, manganese doesn't really attract a lot of attention. So let's go through some of the basics. And that is, what is manganese and what are its most common uses?
So manganese, if I sort of step back to where it comes from, so it dominantly comes from South Africa. There's some magnificent manganese deposits in South Africa, and then followed with Gabon, then Australia, and then there's a whole heap of manganese coming from China, India, Brazil. Smaller amounts, but the big three are really South Africa, Gabon, and Australia. So from the mine sites, the manganese goes into smelters. At the smelters, the manganese is converted from, whether it's an oxide or a carbonate, it's converted from that form into alloys. So manganese ferroalloys or silico-manganese alloys. Those alloys contain about, between 65 to 85% manganese. Those alloys then feed into the steel mills. And so in every tonne of steel, there's between 5 and 15 kilos of manganese goes into every tonne of steel. So let's say an average, 10 kilos of steel. So when you've got a 2 billion tonne steel manufacturing industry, you need about 20 million tonnes of manganese to feed into that year on year. And so that's where most of the manganese goes. Over time, the battery manufacturers have realised that manganese is a really important material when it comes to improving energy density and also improving the stability of these batteries as well. So lithium-ion batteries, lithium-ion phosphate batteries, sodium batteries, high lithium manganese batteries all contain between 10 to up to 60% manganese. So in that space, the evolving manganese chemistries, it's also going to be really important that manganese will become, part of that market. But primarily, steel is going to be your bread and butter, and then I guess the cream on top would be producing manganese sulfate into in a downstream setting. So that's where most of the manganese goes from the plant from the pit to the plant, I guess.
I have no idea. Tell me, what made you decide to pursue this mineral?
Manganese is one of those forgotten minerals, and whether it's going into the steel production or into the batteries as well, it's always overlooked. And I guess the misconception is that there's always plenty of manganese out there. You don't need to find more manganese. But when you really start to look at where the manganese is coming from in terms of supply and demand and the different grade ranges, you do start to realise that manganese is very exposed to supply shortages, particularly in the high grade ranges, and we're seeing that at the moment with the shutdown of Groote Eylandt. So Groote Eylandt, owned by South32 up there in the Northern Territory of Australia. Cyclone comes through middle of March, knocks out key infrastructure. Suddenly, out of the manganese market, there's 12 to 15% of contained manganese gone. There's a massive scramble by the smelters to try and shore up their high grade feedstocks, and also the lower grade manganese grade ranges are also benefiting from that as well. So there was a big, manganese price increased 100% in a short amount of time. At the moment, there is still the shortages of this high grade material, when effectively the only place they can, consumers of the metal can get it from, the smelters, is from Gabon at the moment. So Eramet is the biggest winner of the shortage of high grade manganese at the moment. So it's small shot because it's a small market relative to a lot of the other bulks. It doesn't take too much to knock it out of balance, in terms of supply and demand.
Do logistics play a role when it comes to manganese?
Yeah, most definitely. And that's probably where Australia, we do have a bit of an advantage, and you can see that in the steel, the iron ore sector as well. We've got the Asian markets right on our doorstep, so our transportation costs from Northern Australia up through to the the north or the south of China are always going to be cheaper than manganese coming from South Africa or coming from Gabon. And then we've also got, we can also tap into the Indian markets as well, where we've probably got a small advantage over the South African producers, just purely because of proximity. So that's one reason why I think we're getting a lot more interest in what we're doing here at Black Canyon, because we've demonstrated significant manganese resources. Like I said, largest in WA and second largest in Australia now. So, we're looking forward to progressing the projects and just seeing where it takes us.
In the past, you and I have had conversations about the metallurgy and how you're trying to increase the percentage of extraction to strengthen your overall business case. How important is metallurgy at a mine level to get right?
So, what differentiates the resources we have here in Western Australia is that our in situ grades are around 10% manganese. So, what we need to do is actually improve that grade. And we've done quite an amount of test work to produce a 30 to 33% manganese concentrate using pretty simple technology. This is dense media set technology. It's used widely in the manganese industry already, and also used in the iron ore industry. And it's very effective. It's simple, and we've applied that to our ore. So we've been able to show that we can improve the quality of the ore from that 10% to 33. But we're not done there yet. We really want to improve it from that 32 and, hopefully squeeze a bit more out of these deposits and head more towards the 35, 36% manganese, which I think will get really interesting for the economics of the project, but also in terms of our ability to capture some more of the market.
Now, as you've said, it's sort of a bit of a surprising commodity that's highly sought after. Tell me, what do the overall supply and demand fundamentals look like for manganese?
Yeah, so Shane, in terms of the supply side, really it's the high grade manganese oxide that's still being very well sought after. Prices are around $9 per DMTU per tonne coming out of Gabon. That'll probably equalise a bit or start to reduce once Groote Eylandt comes back online sometime next year. So that's good for the overall market of manganese. It does create a lot more awareness of the commodity as well. In terms of demand, manganese utilisation is really linked to the steel demand as well. In China, steel demand is backing off. It's plateauing now. You saw peak demand probably around 2021. That's still producing a lot of steel in China. So overall, I think the market in terms of manganese production, we're still looking at around that 20 million tonnes of manganese required for the steel industry. It's just that it really depends on how China performs over the next 12 to 18 months, but also how India, which is a newer market that's developing, massive population. I think it's actually bigger than China these days, and their utilisation of steel per capita is actually very low. So they've got a lot of room to grow in terms of real estate infrastructure development as well. So that's a market I think that will be interesting certainly over the next 5 to 10 years for steel production and also manganese.
Listen, Brendan, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. You've actually told me a bunch of things I didn't know about manganese at all. So thank you very much for this incredibly informative chat. Listen, I look forward to getting you on camera again and sort of building out more about the manganese story. Thank you so much for being here.
Anytime, Shay, just let me know and we'll talk soon.